Okay, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the film. And a few points to clarify some of the most frequently asked questions I get after this film. One is, what do you think was the deal with his mother and father? Why was Tsotsi abandoned? If you were an avid film viewer and have an eye for detail, you might have noticed right at the very beginning of the film, when they're going into the subway station for the first time, actually near the beginning, they get into the train station and the camera pans up and you see a big banner about HIV/AIDS. Did you see that? South Africa does have one of the worst infection rates on planet Earth. Something on the order of 20% of the population has been infected with HIV/AIDS. It's a major, major, major medical health issue 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and still today in South Africa. So without saying it out loud, the filmmaker is likely suggesting that the mother was dying of AIDS, and that's why the father may have been either upset or was very hands-off, certainly very angry, didn't want the kids to get near him. And the father himself was a fairly nasty, brutish guy who, because of his demeanor, probably drove Tsotsi away from his dying mother and from his father as well, which is why he ends up an orphan. And that usually plays into the second more confusing thing that students ask, which is, what's this whole thing about? Why would this gang leader, thug, Tsotsi equals thug, why would he care about this baby? It's a film, all right? It's fiction. For starters, I'm sure most real-life gang members would not take on a newborn baby, but they're telling a story here. And it's likely that Tsotsi, of course, being an orphan himself, being a child left to fate at an early age, cannot bring himself to do the same thing to this baby. So he sees himself. That's what filmmakers do. They try to tell more elegant stories that elevate the symbolism. So it's in taking care of this little baby, he sees himself and maybe redemption actually for his life for taking care of this baby, that type of thing. Maybe he's projecting his own self-pity on this child who has a second chance, whereas he is not going to have a second chance. I also do want to point out that there were a couple different alternative endings for this. And the first time I saw this film, back in 2005, I saw one of the alternative endings, and that was whenever he gives the baby away at the very end and starts to put his hands up, or no, he's holding a bottle for the baby, and he has the bottle in his hand, he gives the baby back, and he drops the bottle, and when it hits the ground, one of the policemen accidentally pulls the trigger, and then everybody shoots him. So he dies. That's the alternate story I saw. And I've heard that there is actually another alternate ending where the policeman shoots the gun, grazes him in the shoulder, and in the ensuing chaos, Tsotsi gets away, and you see him going back to the slum. So, which alternative ending would you have preferred? The one you saw, or one of the ones I just described? Last notes, Tsotsi won the 2005 Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film in America. So it was well known a decade ago. It made it kind of a big splash. And I think it is a well-crafted film. Now let's get back to the lesson part. What can we learn from this film about Greater South Africa? Again, it's a human drama, so maybe that's what the filmmakers were trying to show. I wasn't the filmmaker, I don't know. But it's certainly, I use it so you see some insight into South African society, which, although is free now since apartheid is gone, it still has deep, deep, deep social division and deep wealth disparity, which is a result of hundreds of years of apartheid activity and behavior within the society itself. And that has not gone away. South Africa is a place with crazy contrast. It is the largest, we already said, the second largest economy on the continent of Africa. 28th biggest in the world. 350 to 400 million GDP. 30% of South Africans live on less than $1.25 a day. That itself is almost mind-boggling. It's one of the biggest economies in the world, and 1/3 of the people live on a buck a day. It's a very diversified economy with agriculture, mining, manufacturing, service sector, well-rounded. We'd say that's a strong economy. Unemployment in South Africa is officially 25%, unofficially closer to 50%. I did not stutter. Unofficially, unemployment in South Africa is probably closing in on half of the population. It's astounding. Another good point. South Africa is routinely ranked as an upper middle income country that's closing in on fully developed status. And that's something I would agree with. At the same time that it probably has the greatest wealth disparity, definitely the greatest wealth disparity in Africa, maybe one of the greatest wealth disparities on planet Earth. In this country that is a second-tier world power, economically diversified, all that jazz, life expectancy is 50. Life expectancy is 50 in a country that we're borderline calling fully developed? This place has troubles, and let me end with this. Why do they still have troubles, and how is that playing out politically in today's South Africa? Well, the political party that rose to prominence after apartheid ended was called the African National Congress. In fact, the ANC for short is the party of Nelson Mandela. It's the party of the current president, Jacob Zuma, and you know him too. So the ANC has been around for a while. It was kind of on the forefront of fighting against apartheid for decades, if not a century, before apartheid finally went away, and then it became a legit political party within South Africa. As might be assumed, it's the overwhelming, most popular political party. It's the party of Mandela. Everybody loves Mandela, even though he just passed away. So the ANC has been in charge of the government with no close political party second. So it's the equivalent of saying the Republicans won in 1994 by 80 or 90% of the vote, and they have every year since. So the ANC, the Party of Liberation, have been the folks in charge. And long story short, they haven't fixed much. And that's the big problem in South Africa right now. Yeah, you got political freedom, but you ain't got nothing else that the people wanted. So it's great and it's terrible all rolled into one. For 20 years now, the ANC has had the opportunity to make South Africa a more equal society economically. They did it politically. They had the opportunity to do it more economically. And we love Mandela. Maybe you love Jacob Zuma, but they have failed. And so there's starting to be a sense of real angst within the society. And people are like, the ANC, they're so corrupt. They've done nothing for 20 years, but we love them because they're the party of Mandela and they helped free the country, but they're failing and and there's no one else to even vote for because the party is so popular. So it's very problematic for South African society as a whole. You have wealth disparity after 20 years of ANC rule and freedom politically. You have right now wealth disparity increasing. Unemployment is now worse than it was during the apartheid era. Healthcare is less accessible than it was during the apartheid era. The education system is, by all definition, and all analysts are saying the education system is bottoming out. It just is so bad, it's almost not even worth going in most schools in South Africa. A violent crime has been on the rise for a decade straight. So apartheid's been gone for 20 years. The ANC's been in charge for 20 years. But the dream of freedom in South Africa has definitely been left unfulfilled for the masses. And therefore, it's caused a society that is under quite a bit of strain. So we see South Africa in today's world, like, hey, they're free, they're awesome, Mandela is great, and they hosted the World Cup. Oh, yeah, just like Brazil recently did. Isn't that eerie phenomena that, you have this country that seems like they're rich and awesome, and they're even doing international things like the World Cup, and they're in the BRICS group of countries, and they're a respected world power, but they're failing at home, and people are starting to become despondent because they don't see any options for other people to vote for, other programs that are going to help out the country. And Jacob Zuma, the guy currently in charge, he's been in office for 4 years now, and not much has changed except corruption has gotten worse. So he's in power for a bit longer, and everybody feels that South African politics is at a juncture that they have to now change, or South Africa as a state is going to be in some big trouble in the coming decades. And that, I think, is the take-home message from the film that I'm spinning on top of that nice little human drama about social stratification and wealth disparity in today's South Africa. Hope you enjoyed the film. Hope you learned something. Now go demonstrate that knowledge on the quiz. And as always, party on.